Welcome to Fargo Folk Stories, where we explore the authentic stories of the extraordinary people that define our north of normal metro. Today we have Troy White, who's the founder of Upstream Enterprises and Beyond Barriers. Hello, Troy.
Hi, how are you?
So, you're no stranger to coming and talking on radio and podcasts, you said. No. You do this for Upstream as well as Beyond Barriers. Correct. All the time.
Yep.
But you had asked me, do you have any idea who I am or what it is that I do? I try not to do too much research ahead of time so that you can tell us.
Okay.
Tell me, what is it, what are these? So you've got actually two organizations that you're the founder of. Mm-hmm. Give me the 30-second elevator pitch on them. What do they do?
So if you knew anything about me, you'd know what you're asking if you're asking me to shorten that down to 30 seconds.
Difficult.
Yeah, so Upstream, it basically started off as just providing a emotional intelligence empowerment and cognitive curriculum and an approach to helping people through their issues in life. If they're dealing with depression or anxiety, PTSD, things like that.
So it's kind of like therapy in a way, or do you hate it when people say that? Like everybody says that and you're tired of it. Okay.
So, but I work with people one-on-one. I work with people, I work with companies and businesses, so I help them understand, instead of just saying, here's how you should behave, we go upstream to help you understand what is causing those feelings and behaviors, and how to change those things, and through that I started working at the volunteering about 2022, volunteering at the Cass County Jail and providing my program there on a weekly basis, just because of the results I was seeing with my clients, and there's some things that happened that I thought there was a need for it. So that volunteer work, that's the Beyond the Barriers, or that's something else? That's Beyond the Barriers, yeah. So it started off as being just a volunteer, and now it's grown into, I started off with the male inmates. I'm doing the women's programming as well, and doing one-on-ones, and we're opening the class up to people outside. So once they are no longer incarcerated, because there was a demand. And so that's just you, or how many people do you have in your organization? Just me right now. Yeah. I just started the nonprofit in January. So
the Beyond the Barriers,
correct,
but
yep.
The Upstream is also just you.
Yeah, that's just me. Started that probably about almost 8 years ago.
Oh wow. Yeah. And what I like to focus in on, and what the show is kind of about, is how is it that you came to be in a position to even start? Like you say, you're not a therapist,
nope.
But you're doing something probably very adjacent to therapy. Where did even the idea come from, and what was starting that like?
I think I've always wanted to. I wanted to be. I was trying to decide when I was figuring out my life many years ago.
Yeah. How many years ago?
Gosh. It was, I graduated high school, let's just say very late 80s.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and had really low self-esteem. You ever see Dumb and Dumber?
Sure.
Okay, so you know that scene where they're like, the bikini models come up and they're like, hey, we need some oil boys, and they're like, yeah, there's a town that way, Yeah. And I was kind of the same way. I was like, everybody's going to college, and I was like, God, I wish I could go to college.
Yeah. Huh.
Finally, one of my friends said, well, why don't you? And
okay.
I said, I can't. I don't, and I didn't know anything about it, So he's like, yeah, you just do this and do this. And I'm like, oh, I can do this. And so I did. And so I went, I was trying to decide between psychology or art. So I combined them both and went into advertising, and went to MSUM and had my own agency for many years and sold it, and I just didn't find it fulfilling at all. I felt like there was more.
So you had your own agency.
Yeah.
So that was you came out the gate self-employed.
Yeah.
I think that takes. You say you had issues with self-esteem, but I think that takes a lot of gumption to I mean, I really want to paint the picture. So you're at MSU and you say advertising is a nice way, and I agree. Marketing, advertising, it's a great way to kind of strike the balance between art and psychology.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't know that. I think a lot of people kind of trash on marketing and advertising. You know, I think it gets a bad name, especially in the 80s, huh?
Yeah.
That was kind of the...
That was that like early 90s, so that was 92.
Yeah. 80s and 90s.
Yep.
Like that was...
Yep.
To being anti-advertising was like so chic, so cool back then.
Oh,
right?
I know. I was going to be on in New York, and it's like, yeah, no.
But so you're getting that degree. Was it an advertising degree or marketing degree?
It was a mass communications.
Yeah, mass comm.
Yeah,
okay.
Mass comm. And focus on advertising.
For my sins, graphic communications.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that was around at MSUM with.
I think it was just
Ruth.
starting. Yeah. Because like this is aging me, but like they were just kind of transitioning over to computers. I mean, I actually, when I first moved to Fargo, I got a job at a place in town here where we were still using tech pens.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, see, there you go. That's how old I am.
Yeah,
and
that's okay. What is a tech pen?
So, like, if you want, example, if you want to draw like a, 0.01, I don't know metrics, but 0.01 millimeter line, and you can in Illustrator or whatever you say, I want this line to be this thick.
Yeah.
You picked out a pen,
like a physical pen.
That was that width, and then you took a circle template and drew it with that, or that's how you did graphic design.
So this is before the world of computers.
Yeah, or like right transitioning. So we had a computer lab which consisted of one like Big Mac,
So what did mass communications meant something way different back then. I mean, what did that even mean when you were getting a degree in mass communications? That had to mean TV and radio, right?
Yeah.
Like that.
And that was there was. I remember this one guy goes, I got to go check my email, and I'm like, what is that? And I had no idea, because that was like when the internet was first starting, and I shouldn't say first starting, but becoming more more known and popular.
Did you? Were you with Paul Krugman? Did you think it was just a fad and it was going to go away, or did you?
No,
did
I
you
just
see
had no clue.
Okay,
I had no opinion. I'm like, oh, what is that? So, yeah. So that's where I got my start. But I just didn't feel like it was fulfilling to me, and I was kind of searching for something different. And I just I had struggled with anxiety and situational depression much of my life.
Yeah.
Didn't realize I also had PTSD, and I didn't even know that was even possible. It was just how my life was. It was just normal.
Those are common diagnoses these days. I think it's kind of like up there with autism and ADHD, where people are like, what is the rise of all these things? I think maybe it's just being diagnosed more, or what are your thoughts?
I think it's more realization.
Yes, exactly.
I didn't think that. I mean, if someone would have said, "Hey, did you ever have, were you abused as a child?" and I'd be like, "No." Yeah. I mean, that's just how life was.
Yeah.
And
didn't identify it as abuse at the time.
No, it was just it was just normal. And so I when I first got that diagnosis, I was in actually my 30s, and I had been to therapy. I had been to I had debilitating anxiety, but nobody knew it because I was a pro at hiding that.
Yeah.
Just putting on that. I mean, people thought I was just confident and carefree, and I was not. It was every day was a battle, and we hide it because we want to appear normal, quote unquote, right?
When I've got two thoughts. I mean, the more I think about that, so the Japanese have a saying. Idiots don't catch colds. And that's one of my favorite sayings. What it basically means, it's not that idiots don't catch colds, it's that they don't realize they have a cold.
Right.
And so I especially wonder about anxiety. Like, I think low key we're all just kind of afraid. No? I think it's part of the human. I guess what I wonder is, at what point are we just describing the human condition? I really wonder.
Yeah, no.
I'm a very anxious guy myself. I have a lot of anxiety.
And what I've come to understand is it's there's a lot of that goes into it.
Yeah.
As far as anxiety, but trauma is a big deal for a lot of people. They don't identify it as trauma, and they don't understand, how it manifests itself later in life. And so, like they, I don't know if you've ever heard of the ACE assessment, ACE study that was done in 95, 97.
Pretend I know nothing.
Okay. So I can do that. So from, I think it was 95 through 97, Kaiser Permanente did a study on adverse childhood experiences in 10 different areas. So it's a limited, the scope is kind of limited, but it was like 17,000 people. And they wanted to find out the correlation between childhood trauma in these 10 different areas and negative later in life outcomes. And what they found, it was like 17,000 people. And what they found is that people who experienced out of these 10 different areas, if they answered yes to 4 or more, that consistently, I mean, you can have a 1 or a 2 or a 3, depending on the severity of it. But if you have 4 of these markers and you answer yes to 4 more of these questions, that consistently what they found is that it had significant later in life outcome or negative later in life outcomes. So like, I think it was your likelihood of attempting suicide was like 1,200% higher. Using intravenous drugs was 1,000% higher. Alcoholism 700% higher.
That's a heck of an
Depression 500% higher, and cancer, COPD, just all these negative, and so I mean, this has gone on to learn about other things and other studies, but
limitations on those studies are kind of along the lines. It's like they say having a university degree, you're going to make all these millions of dollars more in a year. But what's actually being selected for? Because the person who's motivated enough to go to degree is also motivated enough to go make money.
Right.
You can't do a double-blind study to have them live 2 lives and say, well, if they didn't go and spend that time doing the university, and I wonder with these anytime you have self-reporting, and it's the replication bias, but. Definitely very interesting. And good to look into those things. And
so there's it was like 17,000 people. It was a huge study, and it's been replicated and expanded.
Oh, okay.
And through the years, and so and it's led to more studies and so on. There's going to be flaws in anything, and we can find fault, but I think it just opened people's eyes to help them understand that why. Because that's what I think that for me it was the what. Here's going to therapy. I went to counselors. I went to psychologists, psychiatrists, medication, whatever, and not a one of them actually ever brought it up and asked me about it and about the things that I'd experienced, and so it was more along the lines of here's the what. Here's what you should think. Here's what your behavior should be. Here's what you should do. Look at, for example, look at the books that we have. The 7, habits of highly. Here's what you should do.
Yeah.
What you should do.
Love that book.
I know.
You don't.
No, I do.
Oh, okay.
It's great. I mean, all these books are great, and they tell you this is what you need to do.
Well, I think that's in line with. So you probably want to be a big fan of CBT, or are the.
No, actually. So what
are those in a conflict or not?
No, that actually it is what I work. It's you're learning cognitive behavior skills, and I developed a model around that. So it's helping understand the why.
Yeah.
And then the and the how. So if you understand why you are thinking and behaving and feeling the way you do, then you can change it. So if we feel something and we change our behavior, then in order to get the outcome that we want, that's compliance, right?
Yeah.
We're just complying.
Yes.
But if we change what we think and why we think it and how we think and understand thought process and where it comes from, we can heal those things, and we can change everything downstream from that.
Yeah.
So if we understand why, what our beliefs are that are causing us to think what we do and feel what we do, well, then I can change those things and understand them and see them through a different lens. And once we understand it and see it through that different lens, God, we feel different.
And so that's what you spend a lot of your time doing, working with people one-on-one, is helping them understand the why, rather than focusing. You take for granted kind of the what we're supposed to be doing, but you help
That
them.
takes care of itself. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of what led me to, going to the jail and working with those guys, and now the ladies too, to help them, because I did this ACE assessment I started that in 2019, actually, the first one I did, and so when they did the study, 9.2% of the men have had a score of 4 or higher, and in jail it's 76%.
Oh wow.
So it's pretty significant, yeah.
Yeah.
And women, it's even higher. I'm still in the process because there's less. I just started that.
And
program.
what are the questions that? So you not only you're not just talking about the ACE assessment, you're conducting them yourselves.
Yeah, I give them the tools so they understand these things.
What is it? The questions. So what exactly is it asking for?
So they ask, have you? I'll try to remember from memory here, but they ask if you've ever. Had on a continuous basis or over a period of time had physical abuse. So there's physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse. If there's been physical neglect, emotional neglect, abandonment through like divorce or somebody, death or something like that in your family. If you've ever witnessed a parent being like domestic violence or being abused, if it's somebody within your household used a substance, an illegal substance, if there was any kind of mental illness in your household, or if one of your or someone within your household was incarcerated. Mm-hmm. So those are the 10 different areas, and if you answer, so I was surprised because again, I didn't think I had, it was just normal. I mean, the stuff, but I had a score of an 8, and I didn't think that there was anything that I had experience. It was like, I knew it was not good and it wasn't like normal, but I didn't feel like it was that bad.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And so, but you are the one who's administering and asking the questions, or are they taking it alone and then passing it back to you?
I just give them the questionnaire and say here's the questions.
But do you help them to answer the questions at all? They on their own are filling out and answering questions. Correct. Like, have you? Because the reason I ask is because I'm really wondering. So much. Are you familiar with Wittgenstein? Like, so much is just about definitions. Like, it's people don't disagree; they just have different definitions. Like, at the end of the day, his thing. And I'm just yes, gosh, and the questions, abuse is such a word.
Right. Well, but in the questions, it's specific.
It is. Yeah. It's very specific.
Yeah. So it's very specific.
That's fascinating. And obviously, it's the cornerstone of like your whole thing. So
well, it's not. I wouldn't say it's the cornerstone. I think it helps people realize that, here I understand, like, it's one of the things that helps us to understand how our past experiences affect us and how our brains work and, mm-hmm. and why we react and act the way we and think and feel the way we do, and then how to change those things. So once we're aware of the why, it's like anything, if you understand why your car's making noise, it's like, well, it's making this loud squealing sound when I start it up. Okay, well, don't, especially when I rev it high, well, just don't rev it high. That's not, understanding why. It's like, well, your belt's loose. Now we can fix it, right? So it's helping them understand the why and part of it, and then how to change those things. And they shows them how to not only understand themselves better, but also understand the people in their lives, their experiences in a different way, and to give those different meanings. And so they can, not feel like, you know, a victim. They can heal, and they can look at it through a different lens, and understand what they have control over, and it's a visual way of understanding these things. And so it's just like, this makes sense, and it's been incredibly effective for the clients that I've worked with.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure that's the next thing I was going to say. I'm sure your results are proof of the efficacy, because you and I could go around and I could explore the edges and the boundaries of it all day, and I'm very interested in what makes people work, and
me too.
I wanted to also get a degree in psychology.
Oh.
I got sold a degree in graphic communications, and they're very similar, actually, very similar kind of flow through. I ended up in sales through a very long thing, but that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, like I was in high school reading college textbooks on evolutionary psychology. Like trying to figure out people, and it wasn't until in my 30s when somebody gave me How to Win Friends and Influence People, I was like, where has this been all my life? So I'm intensely interested in it, and so I'm not trying to push back or
No.
I was just trying to get around the bounds of it, because I have a academic interest in your topic specifically. But what I kind of want to go back to, actually, because I think, and kind of the point of the show is, gosh, you know, people are all so different, because that's what the show is really about. What is it? What is the why? What is the why? Why do people do what they do? You know, maybe I'm not focused on the trauma so much as the individual personality or circumstances, right? We've all got a nature and a nurture that led to us. Often it's both, right? And so I want to try to zero in on how you, founding two different things. I understand the beyond the barriers. That makes more sense once you've already got Upstream Enterprises. They probably feed into each other somehow, right? And it's useful. Nonprofits are useful tools in that way. I'm not too confused about that. What I want to know is, what is it about Troy White, college grad, who says, you know what I'm going to do? Start my own agency. Like, where does that? I want to zero in on on not the birth of that thought, the conception. Like, what is it? What in your childhood, or what, where, when, why, and how did you say to yourself? Because look, most people are not self-employed.
Yeah.
Most people have jobs. Yeah. Right? Did you go get a job and then, or what happened where you were like, gosh, I'm gonna start my own ad agency? I mean, that is a heck of a.
I think. I kind of supported. Wow, geez, that's
the show.
I know. So, you know, I never wanted to be a burden. You know, we didn't have a lot of money. I didn't want to be a burden to my mom, and so I worked and I got my own money, and I since I was 12, and so I always found ways to make money and support myself that are ethically okay. But I worked on the farm, and I mean, it's
so mom had a farm, or you found farmers for which you
so we
could
lived
work?
on we had lived on a farm for a while, but it's there's a but I worked with other farmers. So I worked at a farm near our farm. I worked as also I trained horses, and I was a welder, and I was worked on a water well drilling.
You're just picking up those skills. Most 12-year-olds aren't welders. I mean,
not when I wasn't welding when I was 12, but like through the years, I mean, I've done like woodworking, and I just learned how to do things, and just how to be self-sufficient. And so then it's just that's just kind of how I.
For mom, was dad was out of the picture?
No, my dad was in the picture. It's just because of his nature, and we weren't close. I mean, that was where a lot of the abuse came from, and so there were times when we didn't speak for quite some time, and because of the way things were, and mostly from I think my mom, and just I guess my surrogate families. spend a lot of time with friends and at their homes, and you know, so their parents. I mean, I don't know how many people refer to me as like their third son or their, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that, I was just.
Well, that's amazing that you had that community to fall back on.
Yeah,
And
I made my own families.
And it's interesting you phrase it. So you did it. You think it was your gumption, or was it the community itself? Because I don't know if some kid today, some 12-year-old kid, were to go out and lean on friends and family, I don't know that society is in a place. Do you think it was different? I mean, 'cause you talked about showing your age. Do you think things were different back in the 80s? Where, you know, I've seen Stranger Things, right?
Well, I mean, that was, again, you know, like they talk about, God, what am I Gen X?
I think so.
Yeah. I'm XZY.
But your concern about being a burden might make you an honorary millennial. That's our cross to bear. Like, we're just like, oh, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Please, oh gosh, can I call you? I don't know.
Right. I didn't text first. So, you know, it was a different time. However, it wasn't like I was saying, hey, can I stay here? It was just like I'd be hanging out with friends, and I would, you know, stay there for like a few days.
Days.
I mean, like during the summer, of course, but or like when I worked in the farm, I with his family, I just would stay out there for, you know, a week or so and just work, and that
was natural, or do you think that was natural? Do you have reports? So I don't know what it's like in the 80s in Fargo. Do you have reports of other people staying with their kids for several days, or is that something that is that just a part of you? Are you a person who's just intrinsically not afraid to ask?
I don't think I mean, I don't know. I think I'm not afraid to ask.
Yeah.
Or I just assume they'd want me. I don't know. Maybe they didn't, you know. But I think that, you know, I've never thought about that. It's like, I guess. How did they look at this, like the families and stuff like that? Because it was just like me staying with friends, and I'd be out there for, you know, a couple days, you know, just not a big deal. And I think it was like, so, yeah, just some of the farms, I would be there for, I don't know, I guess I don't even think about how abnormal that might be.
That's a great compliment. That's my goal in this show, is to get everybody to say, I never thought about it that way. So
you know, usually that's me, and hey, kudos to you.
Yeah.
You got me thinking.
I think you and I might be very similar.
Yeah.
Very similar people. And so you go to the university, and you're interested in how people work. You get the communications degree. I know how that one goes too. You graduate. You got this long history of jobs. Did you go out and get a job, or when was it that you said? And that's because that was the original question, the original thing to get at. When was it like, I'm going to start? Because what does it even mean to start? What's an ad agency in 1994? Like, what does that mean? Like, what?
So, you know, I started basically kind of just graphic design, and then it just kind of started growing into other things. And
so you already had like a list of clients because you were already so networked from hanging out at everyone's house, or what? Like what?
That was more in you know, my hometown, not in Fargo.
Oh,
area.
okay. Yeah, because we had said before you're still Midwest.
Right.
Yeah, so you came to MSU, you came to the big city to go to university, and you were starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Nobody's house to stay at.
Well, actually, my mom and my stepdad had moved here.
Oh, I see.
And so I stayed with them for when I first got here. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, it felt like a burden.
Yeah.
You know, like I think about that now, and it is an adjustment. Like these kids nowadays are God. Did I just say that? These kids nowadays, get off my lawn. But you know, for me, it was like, you know, it's 18, you're out, you know, and now it's like, God, they can be taken care of for, you know, what a concept or you can stay with your parents, you know, without feeling like a burden.
Do you think that's good for them?
Yeah, I do. I think that, you know,
I wonder.
Yeah, I think in some ways, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with knowing that, you know, because it just, I think it depends on the child themselves. And some, they need that extra time. You know, there's nothing magically happens when you're 18 that says, okay, you're ready. It's like, because I mean, just like having kids, it's like, I don't feel ready, you know? And so.
But maybe we'd be better off as a society if we kicked people out at 16 or 15. Like, why not? I mean, what's magical about 18? What's magical about 20, 25?
Yeah, I think
30?
it's the individuals. Like some people, some people they're ready before 18. They're ready. I want to get my own place. I want to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And then you have people who are like 24 that are like, I'm not ready yet. And then you're like, yeah, you are. And you need to find out that you are. And so I think it really does depend on the individual. And some kids are ready, some kids are not. You know, we evolve it emotionally at different rates. And so we can't just put a date on things. And but yet at the same time, you know, we don't want to you know, have them enable them to not do things because they're afraid. You know, they have to learn that they can do things. And I've always been, you know, I don't know if I can or can't, but I'm going to find out.
Yeah.
And I don't. In some ways, I just was fearless in those areas, like just to figure things out, except where, I think it could be judged. You know.
What do you mean?
So
I don't understand at all.
So if I could be, I'm not afraid of trying things that it's just like, it's not a big deal if I fail. But if I try and fail and I have people who are going to say, you failed.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, I want to stay away from that, you know, because I didn't want to know the truth. Because if it was something that I was insecure about, like, for example, when I was in high school, I would always not study because I was afraid that if I study and I fail, God, then I'm dumb.
Wow.
But if I don't study,
wow,
and I pass, man. And then if I don't study and I pass, then it's like, yeah, great, I passed. But if I study and I fail, then you know, so I could always say but if I studied or I didn't study and I failed, I could just say, well, I didn't study. So this is like a little psychological thing that we do. It wasn't like I was aware of it at the time. I just realize it now.
I understand. Do you think that's common? I mean, because you work with more people than I do. You think people
actually?
A lot of people do that?
When I've mentioned that, people are like, "Yeah, I do the same thing."
Wow.
Yeah. So and then
I can't wrap my head around that at all. But I'm imagine because you said you're Gen X, not on computers. I think the internet, when you were young, would have eaten you alive with that. I mean, that mentality, because everything is judged.
Oh yeah.
Everything is public. Everything is public.
Yeah.
Whether you want to or not, you're trying. At all times, you're trying.
Yeah. and like, yeah. So there's certain things that but I realize that, you know, so they're coming to understand the fears. There's fear of success and there's fear of failure and fear of success. And so sometimes it's both.
Yeah.
And we sabotage ourselves subconsciously. And when you start understanding how we do that, and I even teach this stuff, and I still find myself like, I'm like, I was doing that again, and it takes a while, and you realize these things, and you have this awareness. It's like, I'm doing it. Wow. And you know, one of the things that had helped me, I was going to launch this thing, and I put a date down, and I put the date down when this is going to be done, and I had anxiety. Let's think about it. I mean, not like, debilitating, but it's like, ooh, gosh. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, now I need to explore why am I having anxiety about this? Well, because now, and that exposed everything. That was like, I had been subconsciously kind of, like you're aware of it, but you're not aware of it. Uh-huh. And it just kind of brought it all to a head. And I'm like, because I'm afraid of it failing. And I would, get involved in the minutia of things. So then I got to just do this one more. I have to make it perfect because I don't want to be judged, right?
Yeah.
And so I was afraid of being judged. And if it's not perfect, so I wanted to try to make it perfect. And there's, progress over perfection. I'm like, yes, progress over perfection. But, put it out there. Nope. Why not? It's not perfect yet. People are going to judge me.
I hope you don't mind me having your personal phone number, because I'm going to have some kind of an insight when I'm watching back on this, and I'm going to be like, oh, this is what I wanted to say, because I think that's very fascinating. But I also want to come back around and really, again, I'm just going to keep hitting it over and over. When you launched yourself, who was your first client for your ad agent? I mean, because it's not clear to me what was it, 1994? What year did you graduate? 1992?
I graduated in 96.
96.
Yeah.
It's not clear to me what a Fargo, North Dakota, 1996 one-man ad agency looks like.
Well,
what it
basically,
does.
yeah, like it's just started off in graphic design, just going out meeting people and networking and hey, I need this graphic, I need this
You
done.
just knew to do that?
Yeah, just through school, like we learned those things, and I was actually working as a graphic designer at some business.
Okay, so you did pulled the job first, but you were like, I'm going to do this. So you're more or less like a freelance graphic designer.
Yeah, and then it just kind of started turning into an agency that evolved into. I think it was a small agency. I had like like 4 or 5 people.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So you did start putting people under you. That's wow. That's fantastic. What was the name of that?
Image Communications.
And how'd you come up with that name? That's
I don't remember. Yeah. Just I probably thought about it for many weeks.
Yeah. Well, and so this show was called the Fargo Five. And we talked about it.
Yeah.
I just been stressing for like 2 weeks trying to figure out name, how to do it. Because once you change and once you launch, like I said, it's on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Everything gets tied back to that. Everything's looking at it.
Yeah, your brand now is different, and how.
Yeah. And I haven't really actually officially pulled that trigger at all. And I don't even know how to do it. And I don't know how would you get off the pot and just pick? Like, was that hard for you to be like to commit? Was that something that you struggled with when it came to the name or starting the agency, or you were just so sure? It seems like you're a very certain guy of the outcomes. Like there's no.
Oh gosh, see, that's not true.
Okay, yeah.
I might come across that way, but I don't know. I think that like there's certain things that I am fearless, but there's certain things that I'm terrified of, and those things will hold me back from the things that I'm actually fearless about. So. That's kind of that internal battle that happens for me, and I've helped. This has helped. I've learned a lot, and I think I understand. I think being through so many things, it's helped me understand and relate to the struggles people actually do have. So, I didn't realize where the anxiety I had that came from. It was. Like I said, debilitating. And it wasn't until my daughters, I have twin daughters, and it wasn't until they were like 6. And they were like, we were there talking about their grandpas and their we had step grandpas. And then finally they're like, where's your dad? Why don't we,
Yeah.
And I said, well, we don't talk. And I said, why not? They said, why not? I said, well, he does things that just aren't healthy. And then they're not nice, and I don't want you to be around those things, and I don't want to be around those things. And it's like, well, is he mean? And I said, when he drinks. And they said, when he drinks what? And boom.
Do you not drink?
I mean,
not a part of your life.
I mean, I do, but it's not like I'm not like opposed to it, or just like I don't know.
I mean, were they not familiar with you drinking at all, or
they just didn't know. I
mean,
when they just thought of drinking, and then they said, "Drink what?" I'm like, "Man, at 6 years old, I knew what that meant. Like, Dad's drinking."
Yeah.
And so they're like, "Drink what?" I'm like, oof, "Man." And then I think that at that moment I saw what I had experienced, and imagined them going through that, and that's when I realized what I had gone through.
Yeah.
And so I started writing down these events that I had experienced in my life, and like pretty heavy stuff that, looking back at it now and understanding it. And it was like 14 pages long.
And so you think that it's healthy and useful to bring them out, to bring all those experiences out and write them down, and I mean, at a certain point, obsessing can cause more harm than good, though, right? I mean, where's that?
Yeah.
Where do you find and draw that?
So
that
obsessing about it, no. I mean, or dragging them up just to relive them, no.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what the nice thing about the approach that I use, this model that I created. It's like you have a tool to get through those things, to get it through like present, future. And to understand and process them in a healthy way. It's a way to process what's going on. And I think a lot of people who experience trauma and think life in general, that some of the things that we struggle with, it's how do we process this in a healthy way, especially if we don't have adults who are helping us and giving us examples of how to process these things in a healthy way. And so what happens is that you go, this makes sense now. I can see this and I can understand this. So now I see this differently in the back, from my past, and I see this differently. And you start bringing those things up, not to rehash them, but to process them in a healthy way, in a different way, and see them in a different light. And
but how do you advise your clients, or how do you help them? So I mean, it might be a generational thing. So what you're talking about is a common 90s mentality of going to therapy and taking care of your baggage, and I'm sure there's a healthy way of doing it. But in my experience and in my real life, because I'm sitting here and thinking, and I don't want to attack or push back, but I have my own trauma from others who use their trauma as a cudgel to say, no, don't you understand what a victim I am, right? And so
yeah.
My internal reaction then is to deny all traumas, because I've only ever seen it as a weapon used against me. So nobody's got trauma, and that's how I process and deal with that. But how do you take your clients and prevent them from using their trauma or abusing their trauma as a crutch, or you must have an active approach to that?
Yep, absolutely. So it's you're not saying, well, this happened to me, and therefore this is why I and as using it as an excuse.
Yeah.
It's an explanation.
It's a reason, not an excuse.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then you can go, okay, I understand this is what happened, and this is what it caused, and here's how I change it. It doesn't give you the right or reason. It actually
obligates you to changing. Now that you know why.
Now that you know.
I think people miss that obligation part of it.
See, exactly. So I think that's where people kind of like, if I say, well, if I don't have a chance to work with people and walk through the model first, because then it makes complete sense. But people who don't know from the outside, they're going, and I'm explaining, well, why did this other person hurt me? Okay, so once you understand why they are hurt, they're reacting this way, and they're like, I don't care why. You're making excuses. I'm like, nope, not making excuses. But once you understand your own why, and you understand their why, well, I see this differently. They're not doing this because they're not doing it to me. They're doing it because of their own reaction to stuff, and I don't have to take it personally, even though it might be directed at me. If you take someone else out, or you take yourself out and put someone else in there, they'll probably still they'll still react the same way. So it's not about us personally. That there's something internally, there's a conflict that's going on within them. It doesn't mean it's okay. It doesn't mean that you have to endure it, but you don't have to take it on as a victim either. You can just say, that's on them, and I don't want part of it.
Yeah.
And so it's not allowing people to behave this way. One of the things that I write in order to express, because I wasn't allowed to growing up. It was anytime I would say this bothered me, I was just kind of annihilated. Like, oh, you have no idea, and just my emotions were just discarded, and I didn't have a right to them. And so one of the things that I remember I wrote, and I said, I resist the urge to spit on this grave. It is mine to tend this garden you gave. On my knees I pull at the weeds. I resist the urge to spit on this grave, but instead I plant new seeds. And it's about, I can be bitter and angry and say, you did this to me, or I can, in this garden, of all this pain, I can just rip out those weeds and I plant my own seeds, and I nurture those instead of nurturing what's there and being, upset about and feel like a victim and blame the past and what other people have done to me. It's my responsibility now, and I get to decide what this garden looks like. And I pull if there's weeds, I pull them out. And if I want something else to grow there, I plant those seeds and I nurture those, instead of just letting life, and just allowing what life gives you. Because what you learn how to do is to be, not to be happy, because happiness is an emotion that it's fleeting. It comes and goes. So it's not sustainable. But peace is, and that's a state of mind. So happiness is an emotion. Peace is a state of mind that you create. So in the middle of chaos, some people they can find peace in the middle of chaos. They create that peace. They don't wait for life to give them peace. They know how to create it within themselves to control what they have control over. But if you're trying to you're waiting for life to give you peace, it's even that's part of anxiety. I'm at peace right now. What's going to come along and take it away? Because life, you worry about on those good times, what's going to happen next that's going to take it away. Because I don't want to feel that way again. So we worry about what's going to happen. But if you learn how to create peace within yourself, nobody can take that away.
You could just resign yourself to the struggle. I mean,
you accept what you can't. You accept what you have no control over, and you control what you do.
Yeah.
And so I can't control what people think, say, do, feel, believe, and I surrender that.
Yeah.
But
it's the serenity prayer, right?
Yeah.
Grant me the
serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Yeah. And
absolutely.
So what that allows me to do is I focus on the things that I can, which is what I believe.
Yeah.
The meaning I assign to events in my life, because I can assign any meaning I want. If you like you say you're asking questions, and I could say, well, he's disagreeing with me, and he's I assign that meaning. Or you're curious and you want to know more, and you're just inquisitive, and so I can assign any meaning I want to any event, and that controls how I think. I had I can give you an example. Is it okay if I give you an example?
Yeah.
So in jail, guy comes in, he sits in the back, kind of eyeballs me, and he looks like a pretty tough dude, right? And I call on him first just to kind of break the ice, because, I get a little, this is pretty early on, actually.
Yeah.
I get a little nervous. I'm going to go in and talk to, there's like 40 to 60 guys in the room, and I'm not, I've never been to jail.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to talk about emotions, right? And so this guy sits there, and I ask, tell me something that upset you. And he said, this chick tried to steal my drugs, or she stole my drugs. And I said, okay. And then what was your emotion? I walked through this model. What was your emotion? He said, I got upset. I'm going to use the less colorful language. And I said, what was your behavior? And he said, I hit her in the face with a tire iron. Yeah. And I'm like, ooh. And, you're like, try not to let your expressions, show too much.
I kind of do that.
And so I'm like, okay. Kind of swallowed hard. And I go, what was the outcome? And he said, I'm sitting here. I said, okay. And we talked about how our brain, because the hardware is the same. It's just the software, what the input is, right? And so I explained our limbic system and how we react to things and why and blah, blah, blah. So, okay, let's go upstream. And what were your thoughts in that moment? And he goes, I have no idea. I just reacted. And so I said, was it something like, I said, you mind me taking a shot at it and what your thoughts might have been? He said, sure. So I said, who does this chick think she is? She can take my drugs and I'm not going to do anything about it. And what are these other people going to think? And blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, that's pretty much dead on. And I said, what meaning did you assign? I mean, usually assign a meaning to an event that they did this because, and it's something about our worth. And that causes a conflict between what we want to believe is true and what we believe is true. Because if there was no conflict, I wouldn't have that reaction, right? And so I said, okay, so what meaning? He said, I don't know. And we kind of brought it back. It was respect. She didn't respect me. And that's why she took my, she stole my drugs.
Do you feel like a lot of things just come down to who do they think I am?
Well, and because
is that super common?
Well, yeah, because it's an insecurity. And I tell the guys, I'm like, are you confident? Yeah. Then do you know that you're worthy of respect? Yeah. Then why are you threatened when someone doesn't,
I tell that to my daughters.
right? Because
When they said I'm stupid. Are you stupid?
Right.
Then why do you care?
right,
Yeah.
and it's like they're like, but they have this, I'm confident, I'm this. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
but we only are threatened if there's something, an insecurity, a vulnerability that can be hurt.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, so what was that? And he's like, I was it was my respect. I said, take you out of the picture and put somebody else in there who had drugs. What if she had taken those drugs? He said, yeah, probably. I said, so it wasn't about you personally. No, but you took it personally. Yeah. I said, so give it a different meaning. He said, she just needed a fix.
Yeah.
So give
Yeah.
it that meaning.
Yeah.
And then what will your thoughts have been? He said, I've been there, I've needed it, and it sucks. And so then what would your emotion have been? He said, compassion. I said, what would your behavior have been? He said, I'd have probably given her some. And I said, and what would the outcome be? He said, I wouldn't be sitting here. And he sat there for the longest time, and I still talk to the guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, his roommate said, you broke his brain. And I see this, it's like a light bulb. It's just a switch that happens,
Yeah.
and I can see them processing. And he came up afterwards, and everybody else left, and he said, you got a minute? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And we just sat and talked, and he told me about all the things that he had experienced, and he goes, this just hit me hard.
Yeah.
I broke down crying. And I've seen more guys, these tough, exterior, break down and share. And that's the other thing, I see a lot is in the program. It's 60 or 40 to 60 guys, and they're sharing in there because I'm sharing. I'm vulnerable, and they're vulnerable, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. And I get to understand why that they get to understand why, and they understand it from that, or they see it from. This makes sense now, and so now I can start changing, and I can start taking responsibility, and that's one of the rules of the class.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. We didn't need breaks at all, huh?
No, gosh, breaks.
And it's because everything's automated, so it's going to cut off the video in 30 seconds.
Okay.
So close us out. Who are you? How do we find you? How do we get a hold of you?
You can find me on beyondthebarriers.com right now, or you can find me on growupstream.com, or you just it's
And the song you chose was "Gonna Be Okay" by Brent Morgan.
Yeah.
So we'll get out of here listening to that, and we'll see everybody next week.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you so much for
You
coming
bet.
on, Troy, and thank you everybody for listening. Of course, I'm Conrad Fargo. Just Google Conrad Fargo.